In a world where the line between reality and fantasy fades away, where silence carries a secret, and every whisper tells a story. Welcome to The Whisper of the Narrator. Here, tales are not just told, they are lived. Souls are reborn through words of mystery and magic, where fear, passion, and destiny intertwine. Every story you hear here will awaken something within you. So listen closely. The whisper begins now. Are you ready to listen? Chapter 5: Bronze Tier Magic. Congratulations, Master. You have successfully fused the Iron Tier spells Drizzle and Water Ball to create Bronze Tier spell Thunderstorm. Following the system notification, Watson opened his hands. A dazzling sky blue light condensed into fist-sized water balls. There were more than 100 of them, densely covering the entire attic. Each water ball was comparable to the water ball spell earlier, and the water vapor was connected to form a thick layer of clouds. Watson stood among the clouds in surprise and recalled the knowledge in his mind. Bronze Tier spell, Thunderstorm. Summon a layer of clouds and produce rain within a maximum area of 100 square meters. If Iron Tier spells were said to be rudimentary and one's body could only barely communicate with the elements, then Bronze Tier spells were considered to have reached the advanced level. A mage who mastered a certain tier of magic would be classed according to that tier, and there was more than 10 times difference strength between Iron Tier and Bronze Tier mages. For example, the Bronze Tier spell he had mastered retained the effect of the Drizzle spell, but the original water droplets had expanded into water balls. Once they fell, it was equivalent to hundreds of water balls hitting the ground at the same time. They nourished everything and had a destructive power at the same time. Watson did not expect the spell to change that drastically after fusion. Before he could cancel it, the water balls floating around him fell onto him at the same time, as if the sky had collapsed in an instant. Boom! With a muffled sound, hundreds of water balls merged into a waterfall and swept across the floor, breaking the door of the attic and the windows. Near the windows, the wall made of mud and wood collapsed with a crack. A river about a few meters wide sloped out of the wall and spurted out, while a long rainbow appeared outside the house. Watson stood in the attic and watched as the debris in the house was washed away. Even the 2 bookshelves in the corner fell to the ground, and all the books were soaked in water, leaving him dumbfounded. Then he snapped back to his senses and quickly carried the bookshelves to save the soaked books. What happened? Is there an earthquake? It didn't rain today. Why is the roof leaking? Exclamations came from downstairs, led by Edward and Catherine. Scarlet, Zeke, and Zenoa followed closely behind. They rushed to the attic in a hurry, only to see a fallen door panel and the half-collapsed wall behind Watson. The blue sky was in full view, and they were all dumbfounded. Were you taking a shower upstairs, Watson? Did the water pipe explode? His two brothers asked. Well, Watson smiled in embarrassment and hid the magic book behind his back. Edward noticed Watson's movements and saw the magic formation carved on the ground. His eyes immediately lit up. Watson, are you secretly learning magic? Learning magic? Impossible! When they heard that, everyone had an even more shocked reaction compared to when they found out that Watson was bathing in the attic. Didn't we test Watson before, and he didn't have any magic talent? Catherine shook her head and tidied her open collar. Edward had been clapping her cheeks downstairs, but they were interrupted with a loud noise from above that shook the entire house. She hurriedly put on her clothes and followed Edward up. And at that point, there was still a rosy flush on her face. Watson's seventh sibling, Scarlet, said, "That's right. During the test, eighth brother's perception of magic elements was even weaker than mine. It's very difficult for eighth brother to learn any cultivation profession, especially mages." Ignoring the others, Edward walked to Watson's side and wiped away the droplets on his son's face. He stretched out his hand and said, "Hand it over. Don't hide it anymore." Seeing as he could not hide it anymore, Watson handed the magic book to Edward and smiled shyly. "I've made you worried, Father. I was studying this book just now and accidentally learned 2 iron tier spells. The result was a big commotion." He really was studying magic. Edward glanced at Watson with a meaningfully. He knew that the spells recorded in this magic book were very basic. Mere iron tier spells could never make such a big commotion. But he did not ask further, since Watson was reluctant and simply offered some words of praise. "God blessed us with a second mage in our family. We'll have a good meal later to celebrate." Although he did not know how the untalented Watson managed to learn magic, Edward was too lazy to get to the bottom of such a joyous occasion. Originally, there were so many children in the family who had no hope of inheriting the title of nobility, except for the second child, who was a little promising. However, there were now 2 mages in the family, and their nobility title would definitely be preserved. After all, having 2 mages in the family at the same time was something worth celebrating, even for some of the great nobles. Catherine was excited too. "Quick, Zeke, Zenoa, take the pentacolor fragrant chicken's eggs that have been stored in the chicken farm. Let Watson eat 5 for lunch. No, 10. "Got it, Mother." Zeke and Zenoa turned around and left with smiles on their faces. They were very happy to know that their 8th brother had the talent to learn magic. Scarlet was the only one who pouted unhappily. She had always liked her youngest brother very much, and since the 2 of them often hunted together, her idea was to protect her brother as an elder sister. She had been working hard to become an iron tier archer. So how did Watson suddenly become a mage? How could she protect her brother in the future? Each member of the family had their own thoughts, and half an hour later, Watson was invited to the center of the dining table. He looked at the 10 boiled, pentacolor fragrant chicken's eggs in front of him. He wanted to cry, but the tears would not come. More importantly, Edward kept saying, "Eat more. Now is the time for you to grow. You need to nourish your body." Although the eggs were delicious, one could easily get fed up after eating too much of them. He had eaten plenty of eggs in recent days, and the effects had weakened considerably. In the beginning, eating one egg could increase his lifespan by 1 year, but it now took 10 eggs to increase it by the same duration. The improvement to his body was no longer significant. Unable to withstand his parents' expectant gazes, Watson could only pick up his knife and fork. An hour later, Watson wiped his mouth and walked outside to a field full of weeds. He had eaten 10 eggs in a row, and had it not been for the fact that he could not eat any more, Edward seemed eager to feed him more. Everyone else had only 1 egg to eat, and Scarlet was even denied a second. After eating, Edward asked Zeke and Zenoa to sell 200 of the eggs to a nearby farm. Getting money was incidental to the main purpose, which was to exchange for some exquisite meat and rice noodles to nourish Watson's body. Edward seemed to treat Watson as his most beloved child. After the latter, he discovered the Pentacolor fragrant chicken and subsequently became a mage. Watson did not know how else to persuade him. His stomach felt really uncomfortable, so he went there for a walk. The farmland was also his family's property, and they totaled up to 10 acres. Because there were few people in his family, and no one knew how to plant crops, it had long since been abandoned. Watson thought for a moment. Since he had learned magic, using the system to fuse it would only make it stronger. Other than raising chickens, he ought to cultivate some proper crops there. As he was earlier unable to execute the spell to its full extent in the attic, he wanted to experience how strong the bronze tier fused spell was. With that thought, Watson opened his arms and cast a thunderstorm in the empty field. Let the storm come more violently. Boom! There was thunder in the sky. A black cloud layer that stretched for 100 meters suddenly gathered in the bright blue sky, and there were flashes of lightning. Blue water balls, the size of fists, began raining down, one after another, dropping onto the ground like cannonballs, and creating a deep pit in the field. The scene could clearly be seen within a radius of several kilometers. The workers in nearby farms raised their heads in surprise. What's going on? It looks like it's going to rain. But why is it only raining in one place? This is the first time I've seen rain as heavy as a fist. It'll probably kill me if it falls on my head. And so, the whisper fades. But the story never truly ends. Each tale hides within it a new beginning. Perhaps even another life waiting to be told. You've been listening to The Whisper of the Narrator. If this journey touched your soul, don't let it end here. Subscribe Stay and listen again, for the next whisper will be deeper, darker, and more beautiful.